How real is the threat that Putin holds material on Prince Andrew that could completely destroy him, and material so damaging that it could end the monarchy? Welcome, Andrew, and congratulations on your book. I think that you have exceeded expectations with this book, and it does not disappoint.
Oh, well, it's very kind of you, because I know you know a lot about the subject. Yes, it's been exciting. It means the reaction that it's had.
It must be hard to let your baby out into the world, is it?
Yeah, well, I still keep the files open. I'm hoping people will get in touch with new stories. There will be an updated paperback. But yeah, it is hard because, clearly there are lots of research trails that I still haven't been able to pin down. Lots of stories that actually I was exploring and have, I've been able to find are not true. So yeah, the research goes on. So it's a slightly strange thing because I'm talking about one version of the book when I'm keep finding new things.
Oh, that's exciting. I think you proved the premise of your argument that the Duke and Duchess of York very definitely leveraged their very privileged position as royals for personal gain. But you make a darker assertion in the introduction of the book where you say it was with the connivance of the palace. Now, I don't want you to go into too much detail because I'm going to delve into this later in the interview. But in general terms, what did you mean by that?
Well, I think the palace, and by that I mean the advisors and indeed members of the royal family, knew exactly what was going on. The rule seems to be that as long as you're not caught, it's fine, and then we'll do some damage limitation. I know that there were complaints for him, particularly as special representative, made by senior diplomats to the royal family, to the courtiers, and nothing was done. I think there's a bit I quote where the Queen basically, having been told things, basically it was pretty clear that she wasn't going to do anything about it. And I think I have a caption in the book, every time that he did something terrible, she gave him another honor. Her son could do no wrong. So I'm afraid that it goes right back to the Queen, and she colluded with a lot of these dodgy financial deals that he was doing. Inviting some of these people, the president of Azerbaijan and others, to Windsor, and accepted gifts from them, knowing full well what was going on. And I even have people in intelligence reporting to the palace, to private secretaries, and being told by the private secretaries it's all a waste of time. So I'm afraid this rot, this financial corruption, goes to the heart of the royal family. It's not going to be enough to cut off one limb. There needs to be a proper examination, a proper inquiry, parliamentary inquiry into his time as special representative. I'm arguing, actually, as MPs did 20 years ago, that the National Crime Agency should be looking at this for profiting from public office. And I think the royal family need to do some very serious thinking about how they operate.
That was one of my questions later on. Do you think that the National Crime Authority should actually look into this? So, yes, you've already answered that one.
Not just Andrew. I think there is a case against Sarah Ferguson as well.
I'm really shocked about that, about the Queen. I guess a lot of people watching this interview will be. Do you think that there is any sort of justification in that it was her son and that she was acting as a mother rather than a monarch?
Well, I know it's not going to make me popular with your viewers, what I say, but as you know, I always say what I find. I don't think there's any excuse. Of course, there are mothers who give their sons into the police if they've committed a crime. I think she could have shut him down many years earlier. He spent 10 years as special envoy, and these reports were coming in within months. So she could have actually done the damage limitation much earlier. She's not here to see the fallout. But, and maybe there wouldn't have been fallout. The government is still preventing me from seeing any of the files on Andrew for this period, using every excuse in the book not to reveal them. And again, I'm calling for those files to be released as they should be under the Public Records Act. But I'm afraid, no, the Queen has, a lot to answer for. She isn't here to answer it. And the King himself knew. And the King had no illusions about his brother. He was the one who wanted to keep him in the Navy and keep him out of mischief, and didn't want him to become special representative. This was, as school friends said to me, Andrew was an accident waiting to happen. And that's been the story all through his life. He should have been controlled much more. And he was just allowed to do what he wanted. And indeed, as special representative, the diplomats talk about him and his wife just turning up and expecting them to lay on things for them and basically do some networking for them. The thing is deeply, deeply corrupt.
I want to talk about the Epstein revelations. Now, your version of events does not meld with the recent DOJ and FBI memo that was recently released. Now, you knew what you had. You knew what you were about to publish. So what was your reaction to that memo?
Well, I mean, there have been several memos. One memo saying they had a lot of stuff and they were going to release it. The next memo saying there's nothing on Donald Trump here. And
Yes.
we know that people from the FBI have been paid to go through the material. I think there are 100,000 mentions of Trump in the Epstein material to take it out. So that must have been a big job. So, I mean, there's no doubt that Trump was deeply involved with Epstein. And he's just trying to, as he often does, trying to deflect the blame. But it looks so obvious what he's doing that I don't think anyone is taken in. And people will begin to emerge that will talk about the relationship between the two of them. I have no doubt about it.
Well, I think your book will go a long way to doing that, to encouraging people to speak out. Now, you lay out the case that Prince Andrew was actually very entwined with Jeffrey Epstein, and over a much longer period of time that I certainly realised than anyone really realised. Were you surprised to find that out?
No, I wasn't. I knew the relationship went on a lot longer than he said. I mean, he claimed that it only happened at the end of the 1990s. But I knew from stuff that I'd already read. I mean, his private secretary, Alistair Watson, had written a letter to the Times saying the relationship began in the early 90s. So it didn't surprise me when Steve Hoffenberg said it was 1991. I think what did surprise me was the extent of the relationship with Fergie. That Fergie's relationship also began earlier. It lasted longer. We had Coco P appear in one of you, or make a comment in one of our chats, saying that she'd seen Fergie at the flats after 2010. And I hope Coco P will get in touch with me. I'd love to talk to her. But I've had other sources come forward since our discussion, showing that relationship continued after Fergie said it had ended. And Fergie there were 18 numbers for Fergie in the Black Book, 16 for Andrew. She stayed, we know from testimony, legal depositions and from members of staff that she stayed quite often in Manhattan and even visited Palm Beach. And I'm now trying to nail whether she ever went to the island. So there's a lot of, I think that's the interesting question. Everyone has been focused on him and Epstein, but actually what was her relationship and why hasn't she come forward to give testimony to the FBI?
Mentioning Coco P, I wonder when we had a discussion about that, obviously a lot of people would be afraid to come forward and talk to you. Did you find that in the course of researching the book, particularly about Epstein, that they were quite terrified to talk to you?
Absolutely. I mean, the problem with members of staff, for example, is they signed NDAs and the royal family do come after them for infringing it. They use illegal intimidation a lot. I mean, you've probably seen the papers that Prince Harry has denied the stories about him and the fight with Andrew. And without giving me a chance to respond, has leaked a story to Newsweek. And that's what they do. They use, in fact, what we call slaps to try and put people down and change the narrative. But yes, of course. And I mean, for example, my researchers in Kazakhstan just could find very little because people were so frightened because Andrew is well connected with the regime there. And there, it really is quite dangerous if you speak out. So yeah, people aren't talking. And of course, a lot of the victims of Epstein signed deals with him. They're now married women with children. The last thing they want to do is for the story to come out. So I'm very grateful to the people who did talk to me. Often it wasn't in their interest to do so, but I think they were determined that the story should come out and the truth be told.
Were you a little bit disappointed when all the mainstream media sort of really focused on that Harry story, on that, and some of them even got it wrong. They got the timeline wrong. What you said was that the fight happened in 2013 and the comments about Meghan were in 2017. But a lot of the commentators sort of didn't spell that out, give the proper timeline, so there was confusion there. Was it disappointing, or are you just such a seasoned pro now that nothing phases you and you're happy with anything that gets taken up?
Well, I mean, it was a paragraph in the book. It's not something I expected that would be picked up. It was sort of incidental. So yeah, it is disappointing because I mean, I think there are more important issues to really be discussed, and I'd hope would be picked up. But yes, the sloppy reporting is irritating because I get accused of being sloppy myself. And we may remember that there was that he did turn up with a bruised eye in 2017. People haven't mentioned that. So yeah, it is really annoying, and I'm just hoping that there may be some other members of staff. This came to me from a member of staff that will come forward now and say the story is true, because Harry and others are using it to discredit me, and I stand by that story 100%.
Well, that's the first thing I said when people sort of asked me about it. I said, you wouldn't have put it in the book if you couldn't stand by it. I just know it wouldn't have ended up in there. I was really pleased to see in the book that, really in honour of Virginia Giuffre, I want to draw attention to the fact that you provide two on-the-record witnesses from Tramp nightclub, Alicia Stone and Andrew Wall, who saw Prince Andrew actually dancing at the nightclub that night exactly as Virginia Giuffre described it, and sweating profusely. I thought that was wonderful. That's in there. Do you think that will change people's thoughts about that story?
Well, I hope so. I mean, we've had Victoria Harvey turn up, and she's constantly turning up. There's a whole campaign of people who are trying to discredit Virginia Giuffre, which I think is pretty appalling. And I hope I nailed to rest all the lies about the so-called fake photo of Andrew and Giuffre. It's pretty clear, talking to experts, that this was a genuine photograph that couldn't possibly have been faked, and the evidence is there. And I think the fact that they've tried to fake it, to discredit it, it's been very easy for Andrew to say, "Oh yes, of course, people are always asking me to put, just have a picture with them," and I was happy to do so. And this was a friend of Virginia, of Ghislaine, and we went out for dinner, and that was it. He could easily have shrugged it off. And I think just the way that they responded to this by trying to shut it down, it just emphasizes just how involved they were.
With all the evidence that you provide in the book, and you provide so much and so much detail, do you think Prince Andrew should face further investigation? Do you think it should be reopened and possibly questioned under oath?
Absolutely. I mean, the offence occurred in this country. It was sex trafficking. The Met claimed to have looked at this 3 times, but they refused under FOI requests to give any detail about what actually happened. And even the former head of Royal Security, Di Davis, has been saying that they need to look into this. No one should be above the law, even a member of the royal family. So yes, of course. And if they really want to nail this on the head, there should be investigation. If he's innocent, fine. But I suspect they will find that there's a lot more to the story than has even come out so far. We've been curtailed by libel laws. We've been curtailed by what's only come out in legal depositions. There has not been a proper investigation into this whole story, and it's time it now happened.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, isn't there, that there was proper investigations and nothing was found, and there just never has been a proper investigation.
Absolutely not.
No. Ghislaine Maxwell seems to have escalated Andrew's slide into debauchery. You quote a friend of Fergie's saying she was manipulating him and drawing him further into Jeffrey Epstein's net. But do you buy that, or do you think that just is an attempt to relieve Andrew of any personal responsibility?
Well, that leak came with the connivance of Fergie. I mean, they were worried about him being drawn into Ghislaine's net. And I think I talk about him, there were attempts to get him to stay with other people, the Rothschilds, and not go and stay with Epstein. I agree, it is a bit odd given how close Fergie was to Epstein. No, I mean, he is all his life been incredibly gullible and naive, and has been played by all sorts of people, and doesn't have anyone around him to basically sort of keep him on the straight and narrow. So he's vulnerable, and he will, a pretty face he will fall for. And Ghislaine, but like Epstein, provided both the 2 things he likes best, sex and money.
I got the impression from the book that the Duke is basically a full-blown sex addict. And I'm not saying that to be salacious. It just really comes across that way. It seems he's, like you said, he's always chasing sex, money, but what he's really chasing is sensation, more, 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 more. It's almost like he needs it to feel alive. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what people said to me. He hasn't really sustained any long-term relationship, not even, I would say, with his wife, except a friendship there. And it's about, moving from woman to woman, and even each thing is more extreme in terms of things that he requires. I think he's a very tortured and unhappy figure, actually. In some ways, he shared a lot of characteristics with Epstein, same sort of thing, searching for sensation, new sensations, never satisfied. But of course, Andrew had the great advantage of this position he was born into, which gave him sort of carte blanche to do what he wanted, knowing he would be protected.
Yeah. We have many examples of his extreme arrogance and bombastic behaviour throughout the book. You give so many examples. However, he was a real bully, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a bully, even when he was at school, even as a child. I mean, I talked to his dance teacher, and he was the age of sort of as a young boy was bullying people, bullying staff, knowing he could get away with it, bullying people at school. He was, of course, much bigger than other boys of his age. I had that story with the girl from Gordonson, who's actually a friend of mine from Cambridge, talking about him ripping off the fly sheets on the tent when they were camping, just to sort of tee-hee. A lot of it is about humiliating people. And I think there's a very interesting comment from a diplomat called Ian Proud, who talks about him going to a reception or dinner and Andrew removing the place setting for one of the young diplomats. And then when he comes back, he doesn't know what to do. And Ian said this is because he basically has nothing interesting to say. So he's always seeking to be the center of attention. There's also, I think, an element of Tourette's syndrome about this. No normal person would do some of the things that he does. And so there's an interesting psychological case to look at Andrew and work out, and indeed with Fergie, who I think is bipolar, to work out what really makes them tick.
Seems to be a pattern with the royal family that there are, really things wrong with quite a few of the bad apples. And rather than sort of tackle it, they just try to hide everything all the time. They try to just, sweep it under the carpet. Anything that's not palatable, they just try to cover everything up, and it just creates problems down the line.
Absolutely, or they try and discredit the journalist who's tried to bring the story. I mean, I have a story with Amy Robach of ABC, who had an interview with Giuffre, had the whole story, and ABC put pressure, or the palace put pressure on ABC and said, if you run this story, you forget about ever having access to Catherine and William, and ABC backed down. And of course, nothing was done for 3 years. How many more girls were abused in that period by Epstein? So, it is shocking. And we know how there's this very symbiotic relationship between certain papers and the royal family, how the royal family will leak stories. That was always one of the suspicions against Fergie, that she had this very close relationship with certain journalists. You talk about her lunches with Piers Morgan. We have, for example, the experience with the Sun have shown no interest in this book whatsoever, though it's a classic for their readership. Rebecca is very friendly with Fergie. I even had a case where I appeared on a Sun podcast and said rather disparaging things about Fergie, which they did write an article about. Fergie complained, and the article was taken down, and in return she gave them an interview. And in fact, the only coverage the Sun ever had in the last week is a big puff piece for Fergie last Saturday. So this goes on the whole time.
Yeah, that was a double-page spread, and I was so disappointed to see that from Arthur Edwards. He'd obviously been roped in to do the Fergie puff piece, and
he's very friendly with him. He's very friendly with her, so it wouldn't be any problem for him.
Right. Yeah, I was disappointed because I like Arthur, but yeah, I couldn't stand that piece. It was just, it was ridiculous.
But it's so obvious too. And you make, I think, a
Yeah.
very good point of the the picture of Andrew and Fergie in the car. Would you be going out for a walk in Windsor Great Park when you've got hundreds of acres around you in your own garden? Is
Yes.
this a statement that you're making just to try and earn sympathy? And you make the point that Fergie is constantly playing the victim card. I'm going to
Yes.
reinvent myself. That was someone else. I don't know what came over me. And then she goes and does the same thing all over again.
No one else has made this point in any other book, but you really brought it to life when you made me realize as a reader that she actually harms just ordinary people, innocent people. It made me quite angry and passionate because you realise that all these sort of mum and pop businesses and small, she even owed her hairdresser £40, for example. And that really stuck with me because I realised that that is just arrogance. That's just this attitude of thinking she doesn't have to pay and that they should be grateful to serve her. Very, very much let them
Absolutely.
eat cake.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are shades of Marie Antoinette there, absolutely. And I mean, how she changed. And I think you make the point, Wendy Berry makes that point, which you talk about, how this very unaffected, rather sweet girl suddenly gets these airs and graces and enjoys the lifestyle and is very demanding of her staff. But I agree. I mean, I'm amazed that her staff have been so loyal to her because she treats them appallingly. Kate Waddington, who is her long-term friend and PR person, she bad mouths. If you talk to people, she's always bad mouthing Kate Waddington. And Kate Waddington went for years without being paid and has stood by her. And I think they have godchildren in common. It's extraordinary. She thinks she can get away with that. And I just wish people actually, maybe they will start telling her to, give her a few home truths about how she behaves to people. But I agree, it's when Hartmore was wound up, people only got 25% of the monies. It's I'm afraid that it is a syndrome with lots of people. The business goes bust, start up the new business next day, and bad luck to all the people caught caught by it.
Anybody that follows this channel knows a little bit about the difficulty you've had researching this book. You've been fighting for years, trying to combat the York's heavily curated narrative. What do you think is the hardest part? What's the worst thing you've had to endure?
Well, I think it's disappointing when you feel you're battling alone. It would be nice if people started popping up saying actually he's right, and maybe that will happen now. Tom Sykes on the Daily Beast has been fantastic. He actually did a piece the other day, I think you may have picked up, saying actually all these stories about Andrew's activities in Thailand were well known among the press pack, and finally, someone has actually gone public with them, and he had his own sources with similar stories, and that was lovely and supportive. And I just would hope other people will start doing the same. But I've had a lot of people, establishment historians, saying he's appalling. This is not where we should be going. But the role of historians and biographers is to tell the truth and to, as it is, not to sugarcoat it because we want a gong.
Yes. And that's what you do. You just find the truth and report it, and you don't try to make it more palatable, which is brave.
No, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. No, but they're all saying, well, he should have his private life exposed. And of course, we're all entitled to a private life. And there was a lot of stuff the lawyers took out on Andrew's private life and particularly his sex life. And I respect that. But I think when he's going through 40 prostitutes on a taxpayer-funded trip, then we're entitled to know about it.
Wow. Well, the man has stamina anyway.
Indeed. Well, it makes me proud to be British. I don't know how he quite managed to get through everything.
Oh, no. Yes, it was quite gobsmacking, really. Yes.
But it's a bit like when, the fight with Harry, that was the thing that most impressed people. I don't know why Harry should wanting to be sued the Daily Mail about this, because actually that was the best bit of positive news he'd had for a long time.
Exactly. I thought it was probably the best PR he's ever had. I want to get on to something really serious now. Epstein sold Andrew's most intimate secrets to foreign intelligence agencies. Now, I want to ask you, how real is the threat that Putin holds material on Prince Andrew that could completely destroy him, and material so damaging that it could end the monarchy?
Well, we have two named sources. Mark Dugan was a policeman in Palm Beach. Now, he, for some reason, or actually one of the Recamier, who was one of the investigating officers, said, I think this stuff's going to be destroyed. And he gave him some of the tapes that were found in Epstein's house. And he said, take these somewhere safe. And Dugan, for some reason, went to Russia with this, and he's got the tapes, he says, somewhere. But what was discovered, and this was an MI6 leak to Sunday Times, was that he's got very close to someone who works for Putin, and this material may well have been passed to Putin. I also have another named source, Tim Riley, who worked for Kroll. Kroll, as you know, has very close associations with the intelligence services, and Kroll is Riley is on the record saying the Russians have compromat on Andrew. And of course, every time Andrew went to bed with any of these girls, he would have been filmed. And I've got that from plenty of other sources, not just in Epstein's homes, but in Kazakhstan, in Libya, you name it. He would have been filmed. And he doesn't seem to have cared or taken any precautions. So plenty of people have compromat on him. People have said, well, what sort of material could he have? But I mean, you remember, he was a trade envoy. He was briefed on arms sales, for example, and things. He was in the Navy, and people do receive confidential information there. He worked in the Ministry of Defense. He moves in very exalted circles. So there would have been a lot of information that could have been useful to foreign intelligence agencies. So, I mean, there is, I think, everyone gets very hung up about his associations with Chinese spies, but there are plenty of spies I think he was associating with without him realizing.
Yeah, well, Epstein being a prime one, apparently.
Exactly. I mean, people, the debate is whether he was working for Mossad and others, but I think he clearly had very close links with Mossad, and whether he was working for them or not, he was certainly feeding them information.
He seems to come across as the sort of man that would just sell to the highest bidder rather than worry too much about who got the information in the end.
Absolutely. He professed to being Andrew's friend, but I mean, he was busy taking advantage of him. And one of the bits of information I got was that famous trip in December 2010. Some said was to get more money for Fergie. Others say it was to have reassurances that any compromising material Epstein had wouldn't be used. And of course, that was one of the big fallouts between Epstein and Trump, that Trump was worried that Epstein was going to use his material against Trump. Because Trump said he wouldn't pardon Epstein. So there's still quite a lot about the Trump-Epstein relationship that has to come out. I've had to be careful on that because Trump is very litigious. But I hope there will be more emerging in the next few months about that.
Yeah, hopefully, like you said, if more people come forward, courage to come forward. I wanted to delve into the under-the-radar financial deals by Prince Andrew. You lay this out in such meticulous detail. You give us all the figures. You give us all the information we would need to actually believe these stories. And as you say, it was when he was Special Representative of Trade and Investment. I asked you before, you said that it should really be investigated by the National Crime Authority. Do you think the revelations in your book will bring that about?
Well, I mean, I've been calling for it, and I hope they're listening to that. And I'm certainly very happy to make the material I've got available to the National Crime Agency, including material that isn't in the book. And I think possibly I will be approaching them to suggest that they look into this with the material. Yes.
Okay. Do you feel, though, that the fact that then if they don't investigate, do you think that we have even larger concerns about complicity, about pressure from above, about corrupt officials? Is that going to open up a whole new can of worms if they don't investigate?
Yes, I think so. But I mean, they've managed to dodge the bullet so far. And of course, the problem is that Parliament isn't allowed to ask questions about the royal family by convention. I think if that changes, there may be some pressure. I'm hoping the press will now begin to ask more questions. There have been two interesting pieces recently, including the Telegraph yesterday, where they're talking about how the royal family will respond to the book and what needs to be done to distance themselves from Andrew. And I think that's very interesting. I mean, clearly a lot of people feel that William will deal with this issue, but it should be dealt with before he comes to the throne. And so, yes, the ball is in Charles's court to cut this limb off before he infects the whole of the royal family.
I don't think Charles should try to distance himself from Andrew. I think he should try to fix the problem rather than do all the typical royal family response is PR spin and distancing from the bad apple and then, feel good distraction. What they should be doing is putting systems in place so this can't happen again. And you've got ideas about that, don't you? About a register to register financial conflicts, things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, the Royal Register was suggested by MPs 25 years ago, and of course, just because was knocked on the head. I mean, there is a register for parliamentarians in which they need to declare income that's come in and their business interests, but it's only as good as the accuracy of the register. And I think the danger is that people are not going to properly register things. But, we have Fergie in some ways half in, half out. She's able to go and sit in the royal box, but there's no proper scrutiny of her financial affairs. And one of the things I found fascinating is she has a whole succession of companies which she's kept going for years, which go under the net because they have such few transactions that they don't need to be properly accounted. And one wonders what she's doing with this. All the forensic accountants I've talked to find it very strange, can't understand it, and think there must be something very peculiar going on there. So the problem is that they will hide things. They hide behind frontmen. We've had this with Dominic Hampshire being used by the prince with his dealings with the Chinese spy. We have them using false names like Andrew Inverness, working with people like Johan Eliash. We have them setting up companies that we just don't even know what they are because they're offshore, and bank accounts which are secret. I mean, the amount of royal family stuff which is in tax havens and offshore is incredible. And only really the Sunday Times has really even looked, and Channel 4 have even looked at this. But this is the iceberg of the problem. And so there would have to be a lot of transparency and accountability, and I just don't trust the royal family to do that.
There was a little snippet in your book, and it was relative to Andrew's deals, under the radar financial deals, and his offshore company that he had. And there was just sort of a line about the late Queen having an offshore sort of company, a tax haven. And I thought, what? And then straight after that, it was the fact that Charles might use Andrew's offshore company to process some payments from Qataris on a property deal. And I'm reading this and going back and reading it, and I'm thinking, is there any oversight of the royal family? Because this is astounding that this should be going on.
Yeah, well, there is no oversight. I mean, they have their own keeper of the privy purse, and I mean, they're supposed to produce their accounts every summer, which they kind of leak out when there's other news going on. But there's no proper scrutiny. I mean, I think the last time they did it when there was a royal tour and all the journalists were abroad. So, I mean, there's certainly not openness about the way they operate. And the problem is, George Osborne, who's one of the people who changed the rules, in fact, made the royals much richer in terms of the sovereign grant. All these people are politicians who, get lovely. I don't want to make any suggestions here, but they prosper in the world. And so no one is going to independently stand aside and who has no fear or favor and sit in judgment. And that's the problem. Everyone who is brought into this world knows what they're expected to do, and they do it. So no, we're not going to see any proper scrutiny, and that's the way the royals like it. They'll pay lip service and do odd little things and kind of hope that the attention is deflected by doing some promotion for homelessness or something like that. But there won't be any proper openness about the huge sums of money that they make and the very, I have to say, dodgy people that they associate with, particularly to support favoured places like Dumfries House.
Talking about dodgy people, I want to sort of zero in on a deal that you tell us about in the book about the Water and Sewage Consortium in Kazakhstan, where Prince Andrew acted as a fixer for the deal. And you tell us that he got a personal commission of £3.83 million. Now, that to me is extraordinary. He's working as a civil servant at the time on the taxpayer dime as far as travel and expenses go, even though he officially didn't get a wage of any sort. And yet he was allowed to accept this commission. Is that because you found out about it, but nobody else ever found out about it?
Well, the story has been reported, actually. It was reported by the Daily Mail, so I can't claim credit for that. But there seems to be no reaction to it. And I did approach the various people involved. There was a Swiss finance house. The woman there is actually now a teacher. But no one will talk. But yes, 1%, I think, was the commission rate that he was charging. And the other stories which were taken out of the book, activities in Kazakhstan and in Ukraine, where he was earning commission on deals. And wow. I'm hoping for the paperback that I will be able to put those stories back in. But no, there's plenty of evidence that I found about these deals from suitcases of money.
I've got a quote. You had a source that spoke to you that was actually from within Buckingham Palace. I don't know if they were still working there or used to work there. I think you said used to work there. This is the quote. If the unconditional truth is ever released, I think the British public would try to impeach the royal family because a lot of Andrew's wrongdoings were done on the British taxpayers' tab. Based on what you've discovered, is there any hyperbole in that, or is that just actual fact?
That's the truth. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, whether the royal family would be impeached, I don't know. But there's certainly been very determined efforts to say there's nothing to see here, move on, carrots and sticks being used. And we've already beginning to see some of the fight back from the palace with tame journalists trying to discredit me, saying I know nothing. And being sent out to try and discredit me. So, no, I mean, you know, I think there is a problem, and I'm hoping again some people will emerge. We need some whistleblowers. We need more protection for whistleblowers, and a feeling that when they come forward, something will be done. But I think there is a crisis. I mean, a number of people have said this is the biggest crisis since the Queen died. And potentially it could get bigger for them as more of these stories emerge. And as it emerges that it isn't just Andrew, but the infection is frankly all over the institution.
So we can expect then that you are going to have a real campaign against you once the book is published on August the 14th. So people shouldn't necessarily believe the spin and believe the undermining of your reputation. I encourage people to look up what Andrew's done, his background, his education, what he's achieved, what he's written, and really decide for yourself.
I'm accused of being a Republican. I'm not. I'm a monarchist. I mean, it's because I'm a monarchist that I feel they should hold themselves to the highest standards, and that these rogue royals are damaging the institution, which I think is very important. I mean, I think it is a way of uniting the nation. It is should be above politics. And, you know, all the ideals should be there. And, you know, certain members of the royal family do follow that, I think are terrific. In fact, ironically, it's the ones who marry in who seem to be the best at it, the Catherines and the Sophies of this world. And they're the ones that, you know, and I think it's really sad. They do all this good work and it's diminished by these people who basically have got their noses in the trough. But you can see I'm not a long-haired hippie. You know, I served in the armed forces. I was a Conservative parliamentary candidate. I am not a dangerous radical. I'm an honest friend. And I think, you know, they need to listen to some of their friends sometimes.
Yes, yes. Now, in 2007, 2008, there was a lot of these under-the-radar financial deals, and it was getting, you know, noticed back at Whitehall. It was being noticed back in London. They had all the information. Weren't they risking a lot not stopping, shutting him down immediately? I mean, he went on for another 3 or 4 years beyond that until Christopher Geidt forced him to basically step down. Why didn't they stop him? Was someone getting some benefit out of this?
Well, I think the problem was it all went up to the palace, and the palace couldn't be bothered to or didn't want to stop it. So, I mean, I've talked to permanent undersecretaries. The head of the Foreign Office was one of the people. I know that Robin Jafferin, the private secretary, was approached by people, as well as Christopher Geit. And others, and nothing was done. So, I mean, the ambassador said to me that we knew that if we reported the trip had been a disaster and it had actually been counterproductive, our car would be marked, and so much easier to say nothing. And when I said to the police protection officers, why didn't you say anything? They said, well, we were told you've got a choice. You can keep quiet, or you can go back on the beat in Brixton. And if you keep quiet, you will continue to travel in business class and stay in nice hotels and get a nice cushy pension. So that's how it's done. I mean, this is not, I mean, the gloves are off the whole time. I mean, we have this idea of this very urbane operation. This is a sort of mafia operation, I think.
After he stepped down, he was still doing a lot of trips, this time to Beijing between 2010 and 2019. He made 8 trips, basically funded and entertained by the propaganda unit in Beijing. And people were saying that he was a useful idiot for Beijing. Which is more concerning? Is it sort of the Arab side of things or the Chinese side of things, or both?
Well, I think that the Arab is a financial thing. I think the Chinese thing has certain national security aspects to it. So I think the Chinese thing probably is more worrying. But who knows? We just don't know the full story. And I hope the diplomats know it and they're not talking. But I suspect some of the diplomats don't know the full story. When I talked to some of them in the Middle East, they said, well, we didn't know when he was coming or going. He flies in, he's friendly with the royal families. He stays with them in their palaces or in the palace they've given him. And we just don't know what's going on. Who knows what MI6 are doing? I mean, they were certainly monitoring Fergie and Steve Wyatt, MI5 and MI6, but because of Steve Wyatt's oil deals with foreign countries. But whether Andrew is properly monitored and whether the police protection officers are reporting back to the intelligence services, is what happened with the Duke of Windsor, I just don't know. But I do know from talking to some of my sources that MI6 was certainly reporting things back to the palace through unofficial channels, and nothing was done.
Right. It makes you wonder whether MI6 is basically, I know that they did, you sort of outline that about them protecting the royal family from Wyatt, Steve Wyatt. And I was amazed how deeply involved she was with him. You really tell the true story of that. So I encourage people to get the book just to learn all that saga. But, they need to protect the country. So I guess there's that tipping point where they've got to protect the country rather than the royals.
Yes, well, that's why I think people try and shut down the story. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't also shut down the person who's behaving badly, which doesn't seem to have happened. It was only really because of quite a lot of pressure and really Epstein that he stopped being trade envoy. And as you say, he continued being sent by the government on these trips, paid for by the taxpayer, if not by the Chinese. And of course, he continued with Pitch at the Palace, which was meant to be a charitable enterprise, hosted at royal palaces with the Grenadier Guards and the Queen turning up. And yet he was operating it also as a business operation, taking a cut of investor income, which was, as rather downplayed, and is not really what the purpose of Pitch at the Palace was. And it's a shame because Pitch at the Palace did some valuable work. I mean, I hope I show that, a lot of people benefited from it, and it was a force for good. And it's just a shame it was totally destroyed by the greed of Andrew.
I just want to finish up with one question. We could go on for 10 hours, but I wanted to talk to you about David Rowland, who travelled with Andrew frequently for commercial reasons, for his own commercial benefit. One trip related to an attempt to set up a bank in Saudi Arabia that you say Andrew had a significant or would have had a significant stake in. Was this discovered ever? And what justification did they give, if it ever was?
Well, Roland has never spoken about anything. And so it's very difficult. We've got to piece the pieces together, the relationship between the two of them. So there were some leaked emails which the Mail reported on. So we have a little bit of information there, which I quote. I think also what we need to remember is a number of members of Andrew's staff went on to have very useful jobs, which have helped Andrew subsequently in his business career. I have to be careful what I say, but particularly in the Middle East, but also in China. And so, people are placed in useful places that help Andrew and his business associates later. So it's a sort of network, an operation. I tried, for example, to find people in the Bank Haviland, which is the Roland's bank, to talk to. The bank, which is I talk about, has had some quite a lot of criticism from international banking authorities and indeed fines. But no one will talk. I think people are scared or being paid off. And you've got to remember, why would they talk to someone unless they felt very strongly that the story should come out? And I think most people want a quiet life, not us.
Definitely not. Well, I'd like to wish you all the best for the launch of the book on August the 14th. Now, people are getting all concerned that they can't get hold of the book in the USA, but from August the 14th, they will be able to get hold of the book.
Yes, unfortunately, there have been some problems in the US. There is, I think, a Kindle edition. In fact, I think there are two Kindle editions, which we're trying to get Amazon to merge together. So we're actually building up. The book is actually would be quite high up in the Amazon charts in America, but they're split between two editions. So we're trying to get that sorted. The hardback, for some reason, can't be announced or doesn't go visible until the 14th. So if people can wait and are patient, it will go up on the 14th and they can order the hardback then. It's £24.99. The Kindle is there.
Yeah, that's what I've been telling people, because a lot of people want the hardback book in their library. And I've been saying, wait till August the 14th and then you'll be able to order it. So that's good news.
£24.99. The British edition, I think you can buy in the States, and they're selling it actually for £11, which is half price. It's cheap. I'm actually sending copies to people myself through Amazon because it's cheaper than my author discount to do that. So I think you can order the British edition as well, and that is a lovely book. It's four inserts, full color. The American edition, I have to say, for various reasons, the pictures are in black and white. But the British edition is really nice, and if you can get that, that's certainly one to have. But there will be also an audio from Blackstone, also available on the 14th in the States, and the Collins Audible is available here. So wherever you are, Australia, Canada, Britain, US, anywhere, even in the open market, there should be copies.
Okay, great. Well, good luck for your tour. You've got so many promotional things coming up. I'm going to let all of that sort of get out of the way, and then I would love you to come back and we can just pick through the whole book.
Great.
Slowly yet carefully. We haven't even got on to Fergie yet. I must say, you completely debunked the myth of fun-loving, jolly hockey sticks. Fergie, I was gobsmacked, and I thought I knew a lot about Fergie, but I found out a lot more. So I'll have you back in a month or two, and we'll get into all of that.
Fantastic. Look forward to it.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.